Modern Horizons 3 is here and week 1 is over. I shouldn't say week 1, it's been like a handful of days, but I played a load of mod. And as those of you who are familiar with previous Modern Horizons sets, you're probably thinking, what did they do wrong this time? What did they break? It looks like they've done a lot better than they did with Modern Horizons 1 and 2 in terms of not just completely skewing formats entirely. That said, let's be real, Modern and to a lesser extent Legacy will now look like block constructed formats where a lot of the most powerful cards or best staples come from Modern Horizons 1, Modern Horizons 2, Modern Horizons 3, and Modern Horizons 2.5, also known as Lord of the Rings. However, there is one card from Modern Horizons 3 that is probably making more waves than others. It's the one that I think may get a ban, or cause something else to get banned. Let's talk about the bird. But before we get into it, if you want to help support the channel, hit the link in the description below to coolstuffinc.com to help support the channel, and you get 5% off your purchases when buying single or sealed product for any of the Modern Horizons 3 goodies talked about in this video. Nadu Winged Wisdom is a 3-mana 3/4 flyer. That's right, it's already above rate in terms of stats. And it says creatures you control have whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield, otherwise put it into your hand. This ability only triggers twice each turn. Let's unpack why this card is a little bit too good. When you first look at Nadu, it's very clear that at some point this was probably broken in testing, and they've done a few things to try and make it not as good as it perhaps once was during testing. The key part of that is probably the ability triggers only twice each turn. However, this is where it gets kind of fucky. This text goes onto each instance of a creature you have in play. So if you have Nadu and 2 other creatures, it can actually trigger 6 times in a turn, which means you can draw 6 cards. But the important thing is it doesn't draw a card. It reveals the card and puts it into your hand, so it doesn't trigger things like Shieldred or Orcish Bowmaster, and thus isn't punished by things that are already established in the format. And the weird thing is it doesn't just do it to itself, it does it to all of your creatures, which means this is very easily abusable to draw a lot of cards. We can talk about the really basic stuff. Giver of Runes, for example, giving protection to one of your creatures will effectively draw you a card. And Springheart and Nantuko being manifested onto one of your creatures will draw you a card. But Nantuko is actually even better with this card. We'll come back to Nantuko in a bit. But there's actually much easier ways to break this. There's one card called Shuko. Shuko is a uncommon equipment from the Kamigawa block that has seen 0 play outside of a weird legacy combo deck called Cephalid Breakfast. Full video in the description below of how Cephalid Breakfast works. But in essence, Shuko has an equip ability of 0. So you equip it to one of your creatures for 0, reveal a card, draw it or put the land into play, then do it again. Importantly, how equip costs work in Magic is that if you have a creature with Shuko already attached to it, like you only have 1 copy, like a Nadu in play, you can double equip. So even with just 1 creature, Shuko immediately draws you 2 cards. You've built your own divination. But wait, there's more. It's not just a divination, is it? Because if it's a land, it comes into play untapped. This is kind of wild to me. When I first read this, the first few times I read Nadu, I thought he was a 3/3, and I thought the lands come into play tapped. I didn't realize it's a separate instance per creature you control. All things that I think would have perhaps made this not as good. If it's a 3/3, it died to bolt. If they come into play tap, they wouldn't combo. And if it wasn't every creature you control gets 2 options of this, only like 2 instances of it a turn across all your creatures, it'd be a lot more reserved. Instead, this is how it kind of goes with Nadu. With a Shuko in play and multiple creatures, Nadu allows you to just move Shuko around, triggering Nadu and drawing cards and putting lands into play untapped. The untapped bit means that you can then generate mana out of those lands and play another creature. So let's say you have 6 creatures and you draw 12 cards, and you put, let's say 3 of those cards were lands and they come into play untapped. You can now play one of the other 1 mana creatures you drew, which then draws you 2 more cards with the Shuko, and as you can tell, this kind of goes infinite. So you draw your whole deck. What do you do then? Thassa's Oracle. This fucking card is so boring, but it's the easy win condition when you're drawing your whole deck. If your deck is empty, Thassa's Oracle allows you to just win. And to be honest, if you've comboed with Nadu to draw your whole deck, they probably don't have any removal left. They tried it on your Nadu, and you protected it with some other parts of the deck. In the banned versions that I've played and lost a lot against, I actually haven't won that much with it, which is something I'm going to come to in a moment. I don't think the deck is as broken as, say, Hogak was when that came around. But in the banned version of this deck, Sylvan Safekeeper is a card that allows you to sack a land, target your creature, trigger the Nadu clause, and give it hexproof to stop some removal spell from your opponent, which actually means it's another combo piece, because you can just sack off your lands and keep triggering Nadu and get you there, and also protect your bodies. On top of all that, there's a few different versions that play a 3-mana Teferi. This fucking thing stops you from interacting at instant speed and is so frustrating. This card itself makes the deck very, very good. And the other piece of the puzzle for some of the versions of the deck is the One Ring. I fucking hate this card too. I have got so close to killing the Nadu players by interacting with them, disrupting the combo, getting in with some aggro. Then they stick a one ring, they fucking have a turn of protection, then they untap, draw 2 cards, and then just go off. The turn this buys you is so frustrating when you play any sort of like even mildly aggressive deck. You know, it's one of the problems I've always had with the one ring in shells like Amulet Titan as well. But because Nadu is such a reasonable 3/4 flying creature in green-blue, there are multiple decks that are also playing Nadu. There is a Bant Hammer Time deck that's playing the conventional blue-white hammer deck, but splashing green for Nadu and Shuko, because it's got Stoneforge Mystic already. And there's also Omnath decks that are playing Scape Shift, Dryad, Divinity and Groves, and Valakut, all that shit, to do like land-based damage combos. Essentially, Nadu as a package fits into multiple archetypes. Which one will set as the best one, or whether we'll just see multiple Nadu decks, kind of like how we saw multiple twin decks back in the day with like Rag and Grixis. Who knows? But that brings me to the point that I was getting at about it not being as bad as Hogak. Hogak, when it came in Modern Horizons 1, was immediately such a problem that the entire format skewed around it, and people were playing multiple Leyland of the Void main decks to try and stop this deck. And when I played with it, my win rate went through the roof. I think I'm an above average player, but I was absolutely smashing people because the deck was absolutely bonkers. Fuck off back to Legacy, you sick pervert. Meanwhile, with Nadu, I think I lost 3 out of my 4 matches I tried to play with the deck in the leagues yesterday. So the deck is not like unbeatable. Maybe I had clunky lines, maybe I got a bit unlucky with my draws. Maybe my opponents got lucky with their draws. I'm gonna play the deck a bit more, because I think it's gonna be around for a little while, but I just don't feel like it's as bad as Hogak. That said, it is pretty bad. I've been playing some D&T, it's probably the most successful deck I've had so far in the current format. Maybe I'm just used to playing with shit white cards, and some of the new good white cards, I guess. So I lost 2 out of my 5 games in my last league to Nadu decks. There's just not enough disruption, or I disrupt them a little bit, then they stick a one ring, and they're drawing so many cards that I can't fight through it, and so on. Yeah, Nadu seems like a bad matchup for the deck that I want to play. But the other thing is that the deck takes fucking ages to resolve. And I haven't seen it played in paper yet, or got to play with it in paper yet, but I assume paper is a similar scenario, because it can whiff. If you hit like no lands in your first like, I don't know, 6 or 7 cards, you can struggle to really pop off. So there is a small window for whiffing, and thus it might be one of those decks that just takes so long to resolve that it becomes a problem for competitive play. Now, the real crux of the matter is we've got a Pro Tour coming up with Amsterdam on the 24th, later this month, the last week of this month. I will be there, by the way, not playing in the Pro Tour, but I'll be hanging out and doing creatory stuff. So if you want to see me get things signed or play some party box, hit me up. I'll be around the venue all weekend. But beyond that, in the Pro Tour, which is modern to celebrate Modern Horizons 3, I predict that Nadu will whoop you with a breakout deck, or one of the breakout decks. And I also think it might stand a chance of just taking the event. But it might take a long fucking time to resolve on camera unless people scoop up to it at the mere sniff of a combo. And that brings me to my next point, is like, will they ban this? Now, there's a banned and restricted announcement coming on the 24th, which is the week before the Pro Tour. And personally, I think releasing Modern Horizons 3 and then doing a ban so quickly and before the Pro Tour would be irresponsible. They should probably allow this month to be the time that the metagame shifts and changes and people practice for the Pro Tour. I think a ban before the Pro Tour would be, like I said, irresponsible. But there could be a ban because of both time that it takes and also if it's just too hard to interact with. Now, what they might do, like they did with Hogak, is not ban the culprit at first and ban the enablers. Shuko is a card that has seen 0 modern play over the years and only has become powerful and good because of Nadu, which is a wonderful thing about the eternal formats of Magic, where a piece of literal trash can suddenly be very, very good. Shuko is now the most expensive card to be found in a Kamigawa Precon, beating out Omizawa's Jitte, because Jitte's had reprints and Shuko has not. But the other enablers are cards like the Nantuko I mentioned earlier. Because each landfall trigger makes a 1/1, or in the case of it being attached to a creature, you can make copies of other creatures, which is a thing it can do, which doesn't really matter. Well, the point is, a land drop creates a new body and thus enables you for 2 Shuko activations, and thus you get more card draw out of it. Again, another enabler to an extent. And if Shuko gets killed, there is another card that combos with Nadu, which means that the deck could survive in a different shell. Outrider Encore has an ability to pay 0 to target one of your creatures to do some damage reduction, and who gives a fuck? The ability doesn't matter. You just target each of your creatures twice and draw 2 cards off Nadu, and just you off to the fucking races. And Outrider and Core can be corded for, so it doesn't get hit by like Saga or Stoneforge Mystic, which Shuko does, but Outrider and Core allows them to still be a cord deck. Makes it similar to Yorgmoth or Kiki Cord in the past. That'd be like the combo show it moves to. Or it could be the nail that finally goes into the coffin and kills something like 3 mana Teferi, or the One Ring. It could be that those are the things that elevate this deck to being just a little bit too good. What I'm saying is, Nadu might get a gun put to the head and the trigger pulled on something else before it goes. It's a historic precedent we've seen in the past with cards like Hogak. The fact is, Nadu kind of turned Shuko into a Sensei's Divining Top. Not in the card selection, it actually gives you better card advantage than Sensei's Divining Top ever did, but Divining Top is banned, or at least other cards are banned in conjunction with Divining Top or Divining Top itself, because of the time it takes to resolve this fucking thing. It's a tournament logistical nightmare of rounds going to time and people struggling to eke out wins. Now, Shuko and Nadu is arguably more deterministic. Like, once you start to hit enough land drops and cards, you just will win and people can scoop to it. So it's not quite like that, but it's a comparable thing. It's like watching paint dry, except that paint drying is also trying to kill you. All I know is that we're entering Nadu Hot Bird Summer. This deck is going to be legit, and it's going to be a pain in my ass for at least a month. I suppose it will survive at least for the month after the Pro Tour, and then we'll get some sort of adjustment. And I think that's okay. Having a month for people to try and adjust and find the holes and the weaknesses and understand how to compete into a deck is good. You gotta remember decks like Amulet Titan, which have arguably always been one of the better decks in Modern, are those kind of decks where people think they're absolutely fucking cracked when they first discover them or first play into them, and then you learn the play patterns that help. I think Nadu isn't as fragile, especially when it's got access to things like the One Ring or backup Scape Shift plan or backup Caldra plan or a Teferi to protect your stuff. I think the fragility of it is, it's not really there, if I'm honest. But again, better players than I will figure out the way in which you interact with it, the best sideboard cards and the ways to fuck with it. One of the really funny ones is this. Tunnel Ignis is a 2-mana 2/1 elemental that says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your opponent's control, if they've had another land enter this turn, they take 3 damage, which means that Tunnel Ignis just basically kills them if they try and combo. They can't combo through an Ignis. And that brings me to my final point. It might just be that Burn, for example, takes Nadu around the back of the shed and shits in its mouth. There's some analogies there that I really mixed up. Either way, it might be that there's a meta game where certain decks really beat up on Nadu, and that means that Nadu isn't the top dog definitively, and that's a good thing. Either way, Modern Horizons 3 on the whole so far I'm quite impressed with. This is the only deck that I'm a bit like, maybe this is too good, and I'm having a lot of fun playing Modern. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you want to let me know what deck you're playing down there, let me know. Maybe I'll play it on the channel if it sounds interesting and exciting, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.